Minister, in our area and much of Dublin, and certainly all across the Oireachtas down, the HAP limits that people have available to them if they're looking for rental property are just not even at the races in terms of the levels of rent, where you won't find a two-bedroom apartment for much less than 2,000, more often 2,200. So something has to be done, because otherwise people looking for rental property or facing homelessness are absolutely banjaxed. So I really want to know what you're going to do for them.
Minister.
Thanks, Deputy Boyd Barrett. And look, as you know, HAP supports about 61,900 households in this country. We had a discussion or a debate last night in relation to rents, and one thing I wasn't able to put in the record there was this government puts nearly €1 billion in direct rental support to families, and rightly so, about 585 million to HAP. Sometimes that's forgotten about, and then others try to paint this as some type of subsidy to the private landlord sector. It's not. They're family supports or supports to real families. I recognise your question, and I just want to give you an update on where we're at there, because there are pressures, no question, because of rising rents, and we have brought in the 2% rent cap, and that is taking effect. But that aside, we commit to ensuring that HAP levels are adequate to support vulnerable households, whilst we increase the supply in social housing, because I want to see people exiting, and into permanent homes. We had about 4,300 exits from HAP into other social houses in 2021, which is good, and we're seeing a reduction in substantially in the number of increases within HAP. But fundamentally, we do have a top-up payment of 20% above the maximum limits, and up to 50% in the Dublin region for those households either in or at immediate risk of homelessness. But we have committed under Housing for All to undertake an analytical exercise to examine whether an increase in the level of the 20% discretion available to all local authorities and the discretion within the four Dublins under HAP is required in order to maintain adequate support for families. Housing Agency are undertaking this work and have done it. The review's been submitted. It's actually with my department at the moment. I expect to receive the recommendations following the analysis the department does of the Housing Agency's work. That will conclude shortly, Richard, and I will be engaging with the JOC through Chairman Stephen Matthews here and through members of the committee. That work is nearing conclusion, because I do fully recognise that the increases in rent and HAP limits, particularly acutely in your own area, Dún Laoghaire Down, does pose problems, and we want to help, and we want to help as well by not just increasing HAP, which I'm open to doing based on the analytical data that comes through, but also in relation to providing permanent homes as well for people. And as I said, just to reiterate, we'd a significant number of exits, actually 4,587 from HAP into other social houses in 2021.
Thanks, Minister.
Which I think is very significant.
Deputy.
Look, Minister, in the long run or even the medium term, I'm not in favour of pouring huge amounts of money through rent support, but I accept for the now, until we address the social housing deficit, we've got to do this, because we have to give people options. But this is a matter of urgency, because I'm not exaggerating, Minister. Like, everybody who's coming into me, and the numbers are increasing over the last few months, are coming in, often because they're being actually evicted from HAP tenancies. And by the way, I would appeal to you, by the way, on that ground, if people are being evicted on grounds of sale from HAP tenancies, I think local authorities should just go in and buy those properties straight away. Why wouldn't they? If they're for sale and you can prevent somebody being homeless, just buy them. So we don't have the same people knocking up at the council door saying I'm homeless. But in the meantime, there's a massive gap between the HAP limits and what is actually out there. So the HAP increases need to be introduced as a matter of urgency. Otherwise, the numbers going into homeless accommodation are just going to rise and rise and rise. And they need to be based. I mean, even place finders are sending people out to look at places which the HAP limits wouldn't allow them to look at. It's ridiculous at this point, right? So they have to be increased as a matter of urgency. Otherwise, anybody looking for a rental property who doesn't have a roof over their head or is facing eviction is really in deep trouble.
Minister.
Is the issue that's there. I represent Dublin Fingal as a TD. I meet people, I talk to tenants all the time. And, you know, it is difficult we are making progress in that regard in relation to increasing permanent supply of homes. And that is really important because we need a supply-led and housing-led response to homelessness. To answer specifically your question, I am treating this as a matter of urgency. I did require the housing agency to do a piece of work. I think you'd expect me to do that it's based on sound analytical evidence as to what we do. Can I say this, and I know in the earlier part of our questions earlier on this morning, I have told all local authorities by way of a circular that they can acquire homes to assist people, to preventing people not going into homelessness, particularly where there's HAP and RAS tenancies. So Dún Laoghaire know that. All local authorities, all 31, know that as well. That circular was issued there. And I would encourage local authorities to do so. And we're providing the finance for that to happen. So that acquisition of with tenant in situ is available now. And I will keep the Deputy up to date and informed in relation to the review and when we're bringing forward any changes to happen. I want to do that as quickly as possible, but it has to be based on sound evidence, and we'll do that. And I recognise your genuine concerns in this regard, and thank you for tabling the question.
Final supplementary.
The substantial issue, of course, is we need more social housing stock. By the way, and we'll talk about this later, but I think we should be looking for purchases in excess of the 10%, given the situation we're now facing on private developments as well, right, to increase the options, right, to give people. But apart from that, can I also just mention, because I won't get a chance to mention it anywhere else, probably the income thresholds. You could maybe come back on that, because seriously, we have a lot of people now who are just completely caught in limbo. They're just over the threshold, and now they can't even get HAP support, right, because they're over the threshold. Never mind get a council house. So something has to be done about that as a matter of urgency, because these are, and some of these people are caught in I have one woman who's in emergency accommodation for 3.5 years. She's working in a state agency, but she's now not entitled to housing support, but her income would not get anywhere near the local rents. So we need to look at these actual things that are happening to people in order to tailor the policy to that.
To conclude.
Questions that have come in there. Richard just mentioned in relation to social housing limits earlier on this morning, in response to other questions, we said that work is nearing conclusion. I've received a submission. I sought further changes to it. It's gone back to my officials. We'll have it very shortly with regard to social housing limits right across the country. Okay. The other thing is, which is very important, that this government have brought forward, is a new form of tenure in relation to cost rental in your own constituencies as well. We've seen the first tenants actually in place paying about 50% of what's there in the market. Secure actually those tenancies are 70 years within that development, and there's many others. We've hundreds of cost rental tenancies. So what I want to see is expand that to thousands. People over social housing limits that can get state-backed, secure, affordable tenancies, and that's happening with cost rental. We are reviewing, and I'm close to actually concluding that in relation to the social housing limits. In relation to purchase and tenant in situ, I want to say this to you very clearly. One beds are obviously one that we've been acutely, all of us know the number of singles, the predominance of singles in relation to our homeless numbers. We need to focus on that, and larger families. That's why the 4-bedroom. That does not exclude 2s and 3s. Okay, where AHBs are referenced in it by way of accessing CAF finances, where they see opportunities that may be there as well, that may make more sense for the AHB to actually be in that space in an area where they're in. We'll do that. In relation to Part 5, I have increased Part 5, as you know, and this government did in the Affordable Housing Act, which I know you had issues with, and that's fine, but we've 10% social, 10% affordable on new tenancies, but we need to up the supply. We're doing that. At the moment, we are reviewing and nearing conclusion, not just reviewing, we're looking at the changes to the social housing limits and how they will fit in with the affordable cost rental as well. I think that's important. We need more and more families in our affordable cost rental and indeed in our affordable purchase too.
Thanks, Minister.